Hey there, welcome back to the channel. So a couple weeks ago I installed the 7500 XL Airlift airbags to the truck here, and they've been performing great. We love them. Today what I want to do is install the Wireless Air Gen 3 72,000 kit, and what this kit does is installs a tiny air compressor on the truck and gives me a wireless controller so I can control the air pressure in the airbags from the cab. So I can preset unloaded air pressure, loaded air pressure, all that sort of thing. As I mentioned, we're going to install the Airlift Wireless Air kit on our 2017 Ford F-350 dually. And let's unbox this kit really quick and see what we got here, and then we'll head into the install. Okay, so first of all we have the wiring harness that will actually plug the manifold and the hot wire for the compressor, and this goes up forward to the truck battery. Now our truck has switches mounted in the console from the factory, so we're going to be wiring this into one of those switches, but we'll look at that a little bit later. Okay, second we have a small parts bag with all the parts we're going to need. Next we have some air line. So this will be for connecting the air compressor to the airbags, the existing airbags. We're actually going to use these tees supplied with the kit to tee into the existing air lines so that we can still have the ability to add air manually at the back of the truck if something happens to the compressor. So that's really convenient. All right, next, this should be the compressor, so let's check it out. Get it out of the box here. Okay, so we have some air line for the air filter. This actually filters the air the compressor's pulling in, so it's not pulling dirty air in, and a length of tubing for that. That's kind of neat. Set this aside. All right, we have a couple of replacement filters that go inside this housing, so we'll need to replace those occasionally to keep the air clean. Then we have the tiny air compressor that will mount on the frame rail of the truck and provide air for the airbags. Let's see what else we have here. All right, so we have a manifold and the manifold bracket, and what this does is this actually talks with the controller, and this will send air to each airbag together or independently. And it also filters the air and has an automatic drain, so any moisture in the air will drain out. So we have to mount this on the frame rail, and then we mount the air compressor beside it and hook them together. And then finally we have a little hook to go on the controller, so you can hook it on your sun visor. 3 batteries for the controller. And then last but not least, we actually have the controller here. Let's open it up and take a look. It's kind of like a garage door opener. You can add or take out air pressure, and you can have these presets like I mentioned earlier. So pretty cool. All right, well, I'm excited about installing this kit, so let's get started. Okay, so one of the first things I want to note is we have an inline fuse holder that we're going to mount at the front end of the truck by where we're going to connect power, and it's got a 15 amp fuse. You see here, 15 amp fuse that comes with it. So that will protect our air compressor from over amperage. All right, so included hardware to install the compressor are these self-tapping hex head bolts for a box frame, and we do have a box frame, so we can't get to the backside for a nut, so we're going to use these self-tappers. Now if you do have an open frame and you can get to the backside, they also come with these bolts with nuts and washers, so you can do a through bolt with a nut on the back. Now for the manifold has this bracket. You attach it with these 2 nuts, or these 2 bolts, and we're going to tighten those up. And then these small self-tapping bolts actually attach it to the truck frame. They also supply you with a handful of zip ties to tie up the new air lines. You're probably going to need more, so it's always a good idea to have some zip ties handy. Additionally, they've supplied us with a handful of connectors. These are for if you're going to jump one of your fuses in your fuse box. You can use this little bracket to jump with the fuse And then they've got a couple of adapters to put on the power wire so you can plug it into these little adapters. We're not going to be using those today because we have the upfitter switches like I mentioned. So for the upfitter switches, all we're going to need, we're going to use this on our ground wire to hook it to our battery, and then we're going to splice our power wire into an upfitter switch using this splice, and then we have one to splice the power on the other end into the air compressor. So I'll show you that when we do the install. Before we start the install, I'm going to do a little work on this wiring harness just to make it a little cleaner. So this end is simply power and ground that goes up to the battery of the truck. So we're going to put it aside for now. And this is the harness that hooks everything together. So this will be power for the compressor. And it's cool because it's even stamped on the wire. They've stamped compressor power. And I don't know how well you can read that. But anyway, air compressor power. So it's pretty easy to figure out which wire goes where. But what we're going to do, since these are all kind of bare wires and they're kind of ugly, I'm going to take some electrical tape and I'm just going to wrap these and kind of protect them and make them look a little bit better. Okay, that looks much better, and it's going to look much better up under the truck, plus it protects these wires. Let me do this other one. Now we're going to leave the power wire for the compressor exposed because we're going to have to trim it to length and then splice it with the wire that is supplied on that compressor. With that all taped up and wrapped up, now it's time to get underneath the truck and go ahead and mount this hardware to the frame, and then we can run the wiring and the air hoses. Okay, so I've decided to mount my manifold right here, and that gets me up kind of away from any debris. And then I'm going to mount the compressor right here up high. I can't mount it on the inside of the frame rail because I've got a large oversized fuel tank and I've got a def tank, and so there's just nowhere to mount it there. So we're going to mount them right here. This first bolt hole. Then I can take this bracket off. So I've marked the first hole just here, and I'm going to go ahead and drill it because the frame's kind of hard. And then I'm going to take this bracket off and mount it, and then I'll mount the manifold to the bracket. Now I can install this. Okay, so the book, the manufacturer's instructions came with a template for the compressor mounting holes. So I went ahead and cut it out. I just cut little holes in the dots. I'm just going to mark it with my Sharpie and then pre-drill the holes so that it's not so difficult to do the self-tapping bolts. So let me mark this. Okay, so now it's time to start running these wires, and I'm going to bring them on the inside of the frame rail over here, and I'm going to bring them out, plug into the top of the manifold, and then this ground wire is actually going to be grounded here with this, and then this relay is actually going to be mounted up here with this screw. So I'm going to put the relay up here so that it's up out of the way and kind of protected from the weather. This in there. Okay, just like that. Okay, so we're gonna splice this red wire in real quick with the supplied splice. Nice and tight. Now, the cool thing about this kit is it comes with heat shrink connector. So if we heat this up with a lighter, it'll melt around the wire. Okay, it is cold out today, so it takes these a minute to shrink, but they will shrink down with a little heat. Just be careful not to get the wire too hot. Okay, so we're gonna put the ground wire and the relay up here on this bolt. There we go, like that. Then let's see if we can get it started. There we go. Very good. Everything's tight and secure. Okay, so before we go any further, I'm going to add the intake filter, and I want to see if I can get you guys where you can see this. So up inside here, between the inside of the bed and the outside of the bed, I'm going to mount this and then run this tubing. It'll actually go from this nipple on the compressor. This is the intake. It'll go up and up there, and that way this will be in a dry space so that it will pull fresh dry air. Okay, so I heated up the end of this black tubing just slightly and then pushed it onto the nipple, so that helped quite a bit. Okay, so final product. Let's see if I can show you guys what I did here. So I put this upside down, and there's a hole up in the top that I ran the hose through and ran it back down through the middle right here, and then I zip tied it to the def vent line and then plugged it into the compressor. The air vent is complete. Okay, so now we got the left one hooked up to the airbag to the T. Now it's a matter of plugging it into the manifold. Now these are numbered 1 and 2. Number 1 is left and number 2 is right, so we're going to plug it in right here. Okay, now before we hook up the other side, we have to hook the compressor to the manifold. The only catch is, according to the manufacturer, that you have to have a hose between here and here of 2.5 feet long. So we're going to cut a section 2.5 feet. We're going to coil it up, and that will allow us to hook this to our manifold. Okay, here's our length of tubing, 2.5 feet. So we're going to plug it in here, and then we're going to plug it in the manifold, and then we're going to coil it up and zip tie it out of the way. Okay, so got the other line ran to the other airbag and teed in. Now I just have to bring it over here and plug it in right here to the manifold. I mentioned earlier that you should have some spare zip ties on hand. I've already used all the ones that came with the kit, and I haven't even ran the wire yet up to the front, so it takes quite a few zip ties. Okay, so installation is pretty much complete. I'm going to show you up here real quick what I got done. These are the factory wires for these upfitter switches inside the cab, which I'll show you here in a minute. And I went ahead and hooked this air compressor up to one of the upfitter switches and installed the 15 amp fuse right here, and I just kind of tied it off so it's not loose, it's out of the way, and then grounded it to the battery here. So Pretty simple. And then I just ran it along the frame rail and zip tied it to an existing harness, so it's up out of the way. So let's go inside and turn this thing on and test it out. Okay, I don't know if you can hear the compressor. That's about as loud as it is. There you go. And I'm putting 35 PSI in. Here's the controller. So basically, oh, that's it, 35. So basically, let me show you here. Here are the upfitter switches in the Ford. And so I hooked it to aux 2. So if I flip aux 2 off, it kills power to everything. But with aux 2 on, now I've got power to compressor. So yeah, so there we go. It's both sitting at 35. I'll monitor them for a while and make sure there's no leaks. And if not, then job done. So I wanted to give you a quick update and close out this video. We've traveled a couple hundred miles with these airbags with the fifth wheel, and somewhere just at around 40 pounds seems to be the ticket. They work really well. Really happy with the air system. I was able to actually adjust it on the fly as I drove, so kind of tested out a couple different air levels, which is really cool. So I'll put a link to this kit that I installed down in the description below, so go check it out. If you want to get away from all the manual inflating and deflating of your airbags, check this system out. I think it's worth it. Pretty easy to install and makes your life a ton easier. Thanks again for joining me in this video. If you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up. I appreciate it. And go ahead and subscribe so you can join us on our 2019 journey to Alaska. We're underway now and heading that direction, so don't miss that. Until next time, safe travels. Bye.